Good morning. I'd like to call our meeting to order. This is our special meeting for the Community Neighborhood Enhancement Advisory Board for July 25th, 2022. First item of business is to approve our minutes from our last meeting, which was June 6, 2022. Could I get a motion for that, please? Very good. It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Thank you. That was approved. Oh, I'm sorry. But it says approved to you.
Yeah, but this is where the vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you very much. That passes. Next item is item 3, items for consideration. 3A is street resurfacing project.
Good morning. Welcome to the July 25th Community and Neighborhood Enhancement Advisory Board meeting. We appreciate you making time in your schedule for a special meeting. As discussed in our last meeting, we are moving quickly toward fulfilling the requirements outlined in the resolution that established the duties of the board. Today, our focus will be almost entirely on financial matters. Specifically, we will consider budget closeouts for projects that have been finally accepted by City Council, budget revisions for projects that need funding adjustments, and project approval for contingencies and the allocation of available funding into projects recommended by the board and approved by City Council. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns during our proceedings today, please stop us and we will do our best to address them. I'd like to introduce Brockminer to present item 3A, street resurfacing projects.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. As always, we start with our current funding percentages in each category, and we see that everything is climbing closer to 100%. And with many of the items on the agenda today, we'll make adjustments to those percentages. And we do start with item 3A1, street resurfacing projects. We start with our map, and as you see, everything is green and complete. Get a little bigger on the screen there. And the 8 projects that were previously approved, 1 has started construction. We have 5 projects that are going to bid and hopefully be awarded by late summer. And a couple of those projects tie into some existing projects that were already going on, and so we're waiting for those projects to complete before we get those out. But we only have a few left there. And that brings us to item 3A2 in our agenda today. And this, like Mike had mentioned, we're going to do some closeout on projects. As City Council final approves these projects, we get to go back through and kind of audit everything and see where all the admin costs and everything kind of close out. And so we do a budget closeout on those. And as we did that, in the resurfacing category, we did arterial street as 60% and residential street as 40% of the total budget that was recommended there. And so after we did our closeout of the projects, we're left with approximately $4.8 million in arterial and $7.4 million in residential. And so as we close those projects out, that's the money left, and so we look for, recommending approval of the budget closeouts.
Are there any questions? This requires a vote. A vote, please. me. It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And this brings us to item 3A3. As Mike mentioned too, some of the projects, we come back with some budget revisions. This board approved 2 projects on Check Hall Road, and we were also able to combine a 2017 bond project with that to create a corridor project. And so that part of Check Hall went all the way from Southwest 15th all the way to Southwest 59th, the city limits where it touches into Mustang. And so part of that, there's 2 bridges on those 2 projects. And when we got a chance to get out there, there's a couple issues that we noticed and we would like to fix. There's some bank erosion that is going on right next to the bridge, and then there is some faulting on the approach slab. So everything is real smooth except for right there at the bridge, and those are just a couple of issues that we would like to address. And therefore, we're coming to you and asking for approval on the budget revision of those two bridges along with those 2 projects.
Are there other sources of funds for bridges?
There are sources of funds, but a lot of times if it becomes, a major issue, I think we have come to you with other issues where boxes weren't adequate and requested more funds. I think it's a good opportunity to fix it. There are, different funds that we could go after, but I think this is an opportunity to get the approach slab fixed because it is, kind of part of the driving surface of the road.
And Brock, sort of a detailed question here.
Sure.
With regard to the GeoBond 2017 language, I know there are a whole bunch of projects in this area. I think maybe I'm thinking of 15th between Sarah and Check Hall, in addition to Check Hall going north-south. I don't have the language of the bond in front of me, but I thought I was under the impression that the bond would cover the entire project, and so I'm a little bit confused as to why this new element of bridge support would need Better Street, Safer City funding.
There's a lot of stuff going on in that area. Okay. I think, when the turnpike come through, there's some widening projects to account for additional roads and things like that. But, as a part of the road resurfacing, we can do drainage structures and box culverts and things like that. I think, a lot of how we treated our projects in the sales tax was a lot of the same thing. We kind of approached it the same way, and so. Eric.
Yeah, let me just reiterate. So Eric Winger, Public Works Director for Oklahoma City. So I think to best answer the question, when we start a roadway project, there's obviously companion pieces to that roadway project. So if there happens to be a bridge on that project too, we do address things that are in that surface course or as a part of the driving surface, just as Brock mentioned. So we're not doing superstructure work to that bridge. We're not doing anything with necessarily the piers. We're not doing anything that's related directly to the bridge itself, but it is part of the roadway, and so we're wanting to protect that roadway. So doing those approaches or taking care of erosion issues to make sure that the road work we're doing as a part of Better Streets is really necessary. And that's when we then use that same funding source. So if we found that it was a bridge project, and it was a bridge-only project, we would not be bringing that to you today for recommendation. But since it's a roadway project and it was one that was already underway as Better Streets, that's the reason for the amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think maybe my confusion here is with regard to even the bond project focused on bridges, I would expect the bond project to cover erosion and surface structure as well. So maybe there's just an action to double check on how bond languaging is presented to manage expectations.
So you'll find that in our in most of our bond programs that have the bridge-specific categories, it does provide for other items related to that bridge. So if we were doing a bridge replacement project and then found erosion, or if we were doing a bridge replacement project and we had found maybe the approaches to the bridge were also in need of repair, we would have amended that bridge budget to do those things related to the bridge. But the majority of this work is roadway, so we're keeping it with the roadway budget. If it were predominantly bridge being completed with the bond, we would have kept it with the bond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eric, with bridges, is there usually not federal funds available also?
We do apply for grant funding from time to time for different projects. We do not have anything currently for that, but I can assure you that as we go forward with some of the federal opportunities, we do have a list of bridge projects that are being applied for, but we've not received responses yet.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. It passes.
Thank you. With the approval of the first two, the budget closeout and with the budget revisions, we come to the next category that we're going to try to do, and it'll be consistent throughout. We'll see, we've kind of went through and we've prioritized the contingency funds, which now, with the arterial street resurfacing, we're left with about $4.4 million. And so we've also created a list of projects using the prioritization method. And so we've picked about 10 projects that we, with the contingency being first, we've picked about 10 projects down to be approved today. And so we created budget sheets for the first two projects that were on the arterial list. And so we'll take that $4.4 million and continue to apply it to these projects. And as we have, budget closeouts and budget givebacks, we'll continue to march down that list. And so kind of prioritizing the contingency, picking the projects that we can get down on that prioritized list. It brings us to about 1.6 million. We can't catch the next project on there, but I think that's what we're asking. We're asking for, the approval of the list and approving the budget sheets of these two projects that we're able to use those funds to get down as our next projects. Happy to answer any questions.
Jumping down to number 8 there, Classen from Northwest 36th to Northwest 50th, would there be an aspect of combining that potentially with the bus rapid transit project as well, if that were to be, say, taken up?
Yeah, if we were able to get to that, we would definitely take that back to staff and look into applying, as we do with all the projects. If there's other projects there that tie into or are part of it, we try to look at the plans on those projects and take into consideration with that.
Okay, and then similarly with number 6, E.K. Gaylord from Sheridan to 4th, I believe there was a city council topic over a bond to support either a protected bike lane or an off-road multi-use path along those lines as well.
Okay.
So I definitely like seeing the overlap on making infrastructure that works for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, so along with Tony's comments, I wanted to make sure I was clarifying. So it sounds like you're saying the first two, so actually as you're ranking this, we have contingency, I guess help me, so we're continuing to set that money aside, and then we're ranking these first two projects with budget sheets, so these kind of have an implementation plan set up for them already?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
we have the budget sheets for those, and it will be a part of the implementation if we approve this. And so we will create that list to continue to look forward for that contingency to be applied to those projects. And as closeouts happen, hopefully we can continue to go down the list and get those projects approved.
All right, so, but actually, and I think I didn't phrase my question good enough. So these dollars, so this plan is coming out of contingency, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
So let me help reinforce just a little bit of what this looks like today. So you're going to see this 4 more times for each of the project categories. So we're at a point today at the meeting where we're ready to close out projects and determine what those final amounts are available for each project category. We still have projects that are underway. So what staff is presenting to you is that with the monies that are available, the $4.4 million is as the first priority, going to be used as contingency to finish all of your prior approvals. So without having to come back to the board, if a project is to go over budget, without us having to have another meeting, they'll apply those monies to a project to make sure that it finishes if it's a previously approved project by this board. Now, we do not believe we're going to need the full 4.4 million to finish all of the previously approved projects. And so what you see is project number 2 and 3 on the list. They have a confidence level that's pretty high that says we're going to be able to use monies to do number 2 and 3. But there's still going to be money remaining, 1.6 million if the calculation is correct, and we can't quite get to the 4th item on the list. So we're going to look for other funding sources and things in the future. It might be a bond fund, it might be a grant, it might be some other project that we can combine it with. But with your approval of the projects on the list 4 through 11, the goal is for us to fully expend that money in that order going down the list until it's fully exhausted. But your approval today will allow them to work that over the next several months or into the next year until we're down to a 0 balance. So contingency
Thanks.
first, yeah.
Yeah.
Project second, and then we'll maybe have to use the last of the monies to combine just to spend the last if it's not enough.
So that being said, is there potential as some of the projects continue to finish, because you guys are, doing a great job. I think you're going to be committed on delivering a lot of these projects under budget. So the number could actually grow, and without being aggressive, but the number could actually grow then.
It could, and that's why you see the items that are in gray.
Right.
We want to make a list of your approval longer than the money to make sure that we fully exhaust it without having to come back to you in future months for more and more approvals. You're going to pre-approve the list, and we're going to go as far down as we can until we're out.
Got it. So that helps. That's what I kind of thought was taking place. It helps me a lot to lead to my next question, kind of related to what Mr. Carfang was asking about. I think it just occurs to me that there's an opportunity to potentially even take consideration of some of the other projects that are out there, and that might make some of these that might make this list prioritize a little bit differently in my mind. And I think about Classen, for example, knowing that there's going to be some pretty massive investment along that corridor with bus rapid transit and what that looks like. And selfishly, I'm really inclined to make sure that what happens with that bus rapid transit really turns out to be a great project and really turns out to sort of have the resources it needs. So those things just make me wonder if it wouldn't be maybe more critical or push further up the list than where it is, because I think there's an opportunity timing-wise to coordinate that with the bus rapid transit renovations that are already going to take place.
So if you can follow my assurance, so obviously, the Better Streets Every City program includes the sales tax that we're meeting on today, but also with the bond program, that is an active conversation on a larger scale. So we are actively working with the other project managers and the other funding sources to make sure that the bus rapid transit's highly successful. Now, it's also grant funded, and so it has a lot of matching funds that have already been applied to it so far. And we're supporting that project as we go forward too. So even though it may show just a little bit further down on the list in priority based on our prioritization methodology, we'll make sure that it gets addressed and is a successful project, whether it's through Better Street sales tax or if it's through our bond program. There's a lot of coordination that goes on behind the scenes, I think, outside of this meeting and as we work with the multiple funding sources. So, yes, our goal too is that when completed projects are completed, that they're fully completed. And so we just want to prioritize those two with the balance of the other needs in the city as well.
Eric? Memory serves me, an area that is in bad shape, an arterial street, 63rd Street, east of Western, toward Broadway Extension. There's a sidewalk that is unusable now there as well, but the street itself seemed like that was on the list at one point, but I don't see it on this list. Is that something that could be considered?
Okay. So staff's updated that we actually have it as a 2017 bond project that has a work order pending on that section of 63rd. So that might be a good example of streets that are in another program. I would invite anybody that has questions about some of the upcoming projects in Oklahoma City. If you go to okc.gov, you follow the links to the Public Works website, or if you go to okc.gov and search Better, Safer, it'll actually pull up an interactive map and list of projects that are approved. It includes the approvals by this board, but it also includes all the listed bond projects. You'd be able to find those projects there, but it is a 2017 project that's underway.
Very good.
And with regard to prioritizing the list, if I recall, you have a database that tracks how many people request or report potholes or things of that nature, in addition to engineers who do surveys of roadways. Do police reports and crash rates also factor in?
We are not currently using accident data as a part of the prioritization methodology. Really, the first two and primary factors are the condition index, the pavement condition, and then also the traffic volume. But we are using work orders as a part of that metric, if you'll recall. They're using the similar methodology that this board adopted for the bond program and other funding source projects going forward. So the work that this board did was very instrumental on us building a citywide prioritization methodology that's still being used today. But it doesn't currently include the accident data, no.
Okay. I bring that up explicitly for project number 9 here sooner, from 59th to 74th. I know of at least one pedestrian who was hit and killed there within the past 7 or so months. And there are no sidewalks there, and this is about street resurfacing as opposed to sidewalks. But thinking about the Walker project, for instance, when traffic volumes do support considering a safer lane configuration, crash rates definitely come to my mind.
I think that's a great comment. It may be something that we can start pulling in as we go forward. So, yeah.
Thanks.
But I'm happy to discuss how the list, so you're going to see a very similar recommendation 4 more times as we go through street enhancement, sidewalk, bike, and trail today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? This requires a vote as well. It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. And because we split the arterial and the residential up, we'll see the same recommendation for the residential street resurfacing. We've prioritized the contingency first. We've listed, the next 7 projects. We were able to get down through the first 5, and we still have 2 more that, upon give back money and closeouts, we'll continue to march down.
Doesn't seem to give, a lot of contingency left at the end. I guess you have a lot of more confidence in these, or?
I think we feel comfortable that we can use a little bit more of that money and get down to that. With residential, a lot of times we can go in there and we've evaluated those streets and we feel pretty good that we can get down to there.
Any other questions? All right. It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Thank you. Motion
Before moving
passes.
on, could we jump back real quick to item A2, 3A2? Just a clarification for my sake. PC 651 and PC 623 regarding Walker from Southwest 29th to Southwest 44th. I know a big part of the Walker project for resurfacing included restriping to support protected bike lanes that end at Southwest 36th. Would you be able to clarify a little bit as to why it stopped at 36th and south of 36th remained 4 lanes instead of the 3-lane configuration?
And that was, which project was that? The PC?
651 and 623 along Walker. Sorry for putting you
I
on the
would
spot
need to,
here.
yeah. Yeah. The first thing I always do when people ask, I pull up my Google Earth and I start looking, and stuff. And you're saying that it was a 4-lane and part of it went to a 3-lane configuration?
Right.
And that stopped at Southwest 36?
Right, so Walker from downtown all the way to 36th is now 3-lane with a protected bike lane with vertical flex posts the entire way. And south of 36th, it is still the 4-lane configuration with no bike lane support.
I believe my understanding on that project is because bike lanes, when we want to tie everything in, you know, we don't want to just end a bike lane where, you know, somebody wouldn't know where to go. 36 is where they tie into the Grand Trail, and so that's where we took that.
Okay. I do occasionally see south of 36 the number of people biking, say, from the library at 50th, or maybe it's 60th, biking north from there. And the connector from the south side north up to South 36th is still pretty important in my mind. So just wanted to point that out.
No, we appreciate it. We'll take that into consideration.
I think we're now at 3B, Street Enhancement Projects.
Item 3B1 is a summation of the project updates for the street enhancement projects. As previously reported, the Northwest 10th and Vermont Street Enhancement Project is complete. The Northwest 39th Street Enhancement Project has reached substantial completion, and staff is now working with the district to create bid documents for a field of rotating flag assemblies to serve as a combination of district markers and artwork. Both Northwest 10th from Council to Rockwell and Meridian from Northwest 16th to Northwest 26th are both in construction, as is the Plaza Street Enhancement Project. The Paseo Walker, Portland, Stockyards, Automobile Alley, and Britain Old Town Street Enhancement projects are all working on final plans, and we expect to be able to bid those projects late in the calendar year 2022 or early in the calendar year 2023. We will discuss the needs of the Northeast 23rd Street Enhancement project shortly. I will be happy to try to address any questions you have on the status update.
Yeah, one question. So the approval that we just did for the street resurfacing, I'm assuming we're coordinating that activity in the plaza with the street enhancements that are set to take place?
It would, Mr. Thompson. So we were able to get a work order started for the street enhancement work, so really the area behind the curb, but the resurfacing of 16th, really from all the way from Penn to Classen, will benefit the district as a whole, but then also it will tie in that corridor that we've been able to do further to the west with resurfacing. So we're going to actually get to 23rd Street in a similar conversation in just a second, but you do see the resurfacing start to play a role with the street enhancement project as well.
Great, thanks.
Moving to item 3B2, it shows the budget closeout returning approximately $411,000 from the Northwest 10th and Vermont project to unallocated street enhancement funding, resulting in a total of $7,153,796.36 that is now available for assignment into either new or existing projects. And I will try to answer any questions you have about this item.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Thank you. That passes.
Item 3B3 is a budget revision for the Northeast 23rd Street Enhancement Project. In past meetings, staff has alluded to Northeast 23rd Street being underfunded, and despite a previous streetscape along that route, a quick look at the physical characteristics of the site confirms the presence of many of the deficiencies that plague an underdeveloped area: missing sidewalk connectivity, lack of ADA infrastructure, and poor pedestrian lighting. The budget revision for the Northeast 23rd Street Enhancement Project seeks to add $4 million to the original $1 million budget to provide adequate resources to target these deficiencies and more. Combined with the $1.4 million budget approved in item 3A4 for the resurfacing of Northeast 23rd from Martin Luther King to I-35, this will make a total of $6,400,000 available for addressing the needs of the area. Staff proposes to bring an engineering report for Northeast 23rd Street to your next meeting, and with its approval, we would then proceed to start assembling a design team for the project. More so than most street enhancement projects, a priority will be given to developing a robust community outreach effort to look beyond issues such as a driveway that leads to nowhere or a pedestrian lacking connectivity. We seek to understand the present, the past, and the future of the community and the ways the streetscape will unite, serve, and propel the area forward. I would try to answer any questions that you have regarding the budget revision.
This has been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. 3B3 is passed.
Following the board's action on items 3B2 and 3B3, just over $3 million remains unallocated in the street enhancement category. Similar to what Brock led you through on the resurfacing item, rather than identifying a list of new projects, we are asking you to consider identifying the remaining funding as a contingency to be used either to meet inflationary price increases or to allow for accepting ad alternates during the bid process. As mentioned during the status update for the street enhancement projects, 7 different projects will be bid over the next few months, and a dedicated bidding contingency will provide flexibility for how best to evaluate and award various bid options. I would be happy to address any questions or comments you might have.
So at this point, I know we added the Britton Road Street Enhancement Program, and that was fully funded. So we have all the street enhancement programs kind of on the slate with funds set aside for them at this point.
We do, Mr. Thompson. Britton Old Town was funded at $2.4 million total, which I think results in about $1.6 million construction budget. Again, I think coming out of COVID, we've seen some inflation affect pricing, although certainly with asphalt, maybe we've seen the price of oil come back down a little bit. Just because of some of that uncertainty, I think having the ability to address inflation issues would be beneficial. But I think what it does as well is when you look at that slate of street enhancements, really all the way from 23rd to Britton to, Paseo Walker, it gives you the ability to bid a base bid and
some
then
alternates.
some additional work as ad alternates. And it would really allow you to kind of maximize your scope of work on those projects.
Great. I appreciate that answer. That kind of leads to the other question that I had, which was of the completed projects, were there alternates or things that were discussed that weren't sort of able to be addressed in what was delivered? So think about 39th Street, just because I know there was a pretty robust both conversation and visioning about what they wanted to accomplish there.
I think 39th really turned out well. I think it bid kind of on the front end of that period. I I forget exactly how many bids we got, but we really got a wonderful bid and had a good contractor. And we have done some change orders in that project to be able to address some of the needs that the district identified. You know, as staff, we would like that change order to be as low as possible, right? But after bidding, the district identified electric for festival activities as one of their targets, and we were able to process a change order for about $100,000 to be able to add that back in, just because those original bids did come in low enough that that money was available in the budget.
Great.
So I do think street enhancement and bike lanes both have been more complicated projects. We haven't gotten as far in the bidding process with street enhancements as we would like, but certainly the early project being 39th, we've been able to manage that with the district.
Great, thanks.
To sort of follow on to Mr. Thompson's comments, I think there may have been some discussions at some points of should a street enhancement project include raised crosswalks? Well, if we're going to also account for street drainage appropriately, that really jacks up the price. And so bulb outs to shorten crossing distance is deemed sufficient. It would be nice to potentially reevaluate the raised crosswalk ideas in various areas if we've got the funds to also support the drainage effectively. I think especially timely with our heat wave, and then thinking about the Northeast 23rd project and how hot it is to bike to the zoo through there. I'd certainly love to see, and then on top of the big freezes that we've had that killed a lot of our tree canopy, I'd certainly love to see more tree canopy added into the projects where we can.
Mr. Carfang, I would tell you Eric has kind of challenged us to find the right place for a raised crosswalk.
Okay.
We worked really hard to try to make that part of the plaza project just because we thought 16th laid out well. Back to your point, I think unfortunately the lack of drainage in the area really caused the price to do it at that location to skyrocket. So we are kind of actively looking for the right place to implement some of those traffic calming measures that we think would be beneficial.
Right, and since we've got a decent contingency here, I think there's a reasonable aspect of available funds that wouldn't be enough to fully fund a complete street enhancement elsewhere, but enhancing some of the current ones with the raised crosswalk, I think is an appropriate discussion to have.
I know I'm kind of shifting back just a little bit, but your earlier comment about shields, I do think that staff has looked at other funding sources perhaps for that. And if you don't mind, that's maybe something that we talk about offline, but staff is actively looking maybe for some funding to address that area.
Okay, great. I appreciate that.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. That passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 3C1, sidewalks. Our status map shows that everything is complete, just downtown sidewalks. We're working to close all that out and get that approved through City Council to close that project out. Item 3C2 is kind of the same thing as we audit through each project and kind of close out that project and get those funds that are still available. It leaves us with approximately $524,000. And so happy to answer any questions there. If not, we just ask for a recommendation for that budget closeouts.
Brock, I have a
question on that area of 63rd Street,
east of Western.
that sidewalk on the south side of the street is closed, and that area gets a lot of pedestrian traffic, and which puts people right out in the middle of 63rd Street. I know that's an existing sidewalk. It's been there for a long time, but is that something you can make note of?
Absolutely. No, I'll take that back to staff and see what's going on there and see if we can do something about that.
Thank you.
And I know that I'm personally very pleased with the progress on sidewalks that I've seen. I know vocally, citywide, there tend to be a lot of comments about potholes and whatnot. But I'm curious, have you received positive feedback from the public at large regarding the sidewalk projects too?
I've got a few phone calls that were excited about it, and kind of in the same retrospect, they really wanted to add some additional stuff and keep the momentum going. So we take note of that and continue to put that on lists. I work with planning a lot to prioritize some of those and get those on lists, and I think they're always looking for future funding to do those projects. But I have got some good feedback for sure.
Good, I'm glad.
Brock, I have a question. Before MAPS 3, Oklahoma City was rated as one of the most unwalkable cities. Since MAPS 3, we have a lot of sidewalks around our town. I haven't seen any other national surveys on that, but I would think we would certainly have come well up in ratings. Are you familiar with any of the national surveys on walkability?
I am not. I know we 2007 bond, we did sidewalk on, one side of the street. We tried to pick paths and stuff like that. And like you said, the funding sources and the dedication for sidewalk it continues to climb. And so hopefully we're getting a whole lot better on that for sure. I mean, I think as we close gaps and tie everything into each other with bike lanes and sidewalks, I think it's got to be a positive note.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
How would you like to vote? What? Okay, how would you like to vote? Tony, did yours come up?
Yeah, mine came on.
It's not giving it to me. How would you like to vote?
Yes.
Very good. All right, that motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 3C3, and just like the other categories, we're left with a contingency. Oh, went one too far. That leaves us with a contingency of approximately $524,000, and we've created a list, prioritizing it, and then an additional 4 projects going down, and we'll approve this list, and as funds come available and we look at other funds to match these, we'll get to Northwest 39th and Portland in that vicinity, and continue to move down that list.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Motion passes. Next is 3D, bicycle facilities.
The bicycle infrastructure project updates make up item 3D1. As reported in past meetings, the Villa North, Independence Grand, Spring Lake, and Indiana Linwood bicycle facility projects are all under design. The Southwest 25th Street project is currently in construction. Work on the Chartel project, as well as the west and east ends of the General Pershing project, has been completed. At the July 18th Traffic Commission meeting, The request to remove parking from the north side of Main Street was approved, and as a result, a 3-lane section with dedicated bicycle lanes can now be completed between Penn and Western on Main. Likewise, the petitioning process is being readied for stakeholders on Lottie to revise parking in various areas to facilitate the implementation of dedicated bicycle lanes along that route. It is expected that Lottie will feature the city's first parking-protected bicycle lanes, and a public meeting has been scheduled on August 18th to discuss the Lottie bicycle lanes with the community. I'm happy to take any questions you have on bicycle facilities.
Do you know where the public meeting is being held?
It's going to be at Amos Memorial Church at
Perfect.
1301 Northeast 18th, Mr. Thompson, 6 to 7:30 that evening.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, what was the date of that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Carfang?
What was the date of the meeting?
August 18th, 6 to 7:30.
Thank you.
Item 3D2 is a budget revision of $589,961 for the Indiana Linwood Bicycle Infrastructure Project. As staff has worked through the details of the design for Indiana Linwood, the need to replace the traffic signal infrastructure at Indiana Linwood and pavement on Linwood from Indiana to Western has increased the funding need. In addition, an extension on the east end of the project from Chartel to Western would allow the project to reach a better north-south connection point. The design for Indiana Linwood will be presented at your next meeting. I would be happy to try to address any comments you have.
Been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. Motion passes.
Following the board's action on item 3D2, just over $800,000 remains unallocated in the bicycle infrastructure category. As with the other categories, we are recommending that this amount be prioritized first as a contingency. Furthermore, we are presenting 2 projects for the board's consideration should additional funding become available through budget closeouts or some other source. The first, Villa Central, was one of the original bicycle infrastructure projects, but it was cut due to funding concerns. The second, Northeast 4th from Broadway to Lottie, is an entirely new project that would provide connectivity from the Central Business District to the Lottie Bicycle Infrastructure Project. Again, I would try to answer any questions you have.
With regard to contingency funding, just 2 quick little notes. At the new protected intersection of Main and Western, I just wanted to note that 2 of the little armadillos are no longer there.
Okay.
And I was kind of curious where we are at in terms of policy for gluing flex posts and armadillos down versus bolting them into the ground.
Okay. I know, again, part of our process in maintaining bicycle infrastructure, we have created a small department and staffed that department. We have provided some infrastructure as far as like a street sweeper and that sort of thing. And we have purchased some attic stock to be able to replace things like delineators, regardless, I guess, of style. I think with respect to the stick delineators, we went through several installation methods before we found something that we felt like lived very well. Certainly, maybe given the newness of the armadillos, let us go back and evaluate that, Mr. Carfang, and kind of see where we land.
Okay, thank you. And then with regard to the 4th Street from Broadway to Lottie, that is on my daily commute between work and daycare. And a couple of little notes. The Jewel Theater there, the community around supporting and revitalizing that is extremely enthusiastic about the area. The Paige Woodson projects, apartments, condos over there have really helped revitalize that area as well. I love going to Culture Coffee over there, so this connection would be pretty fantastic. And then I'll just also throw out the bus that runs down 4th is always on schedule. I find myself always right in front or right behind it every single time. So I think I'm just a fan of that project.
Okay. As we move forward, we'll just stay in contact and offer or ask for your insight, and we'll work together on that.
And then certainly the organization south of 8th Street would love to be as included as possible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I did have, Mr. Carfing reminded me of something. So in regards to that piece, since it looks like those contingencies, we may be able to get to those projects. There's some significant conversation in MAPS 4 around that as well. And I think it's perfectly timed, actually, because I was actually kind of a little surprised to see this bicycle infrastructure, mostly because of Lincoln and the challenge that it presents in being able to get people across it. But there is a conversation ongoing from the South of 8th planning effort and the MAPS Innovation District connectivity planning effort. So this intent to build that sort of bicycle infrastructure may be able to coincide with some other thoughts on how you get Lincoln to be a pathway that you can cross a little bit more easily as well. So that's just, I'm sure you guys know about that, but it just reminded me of the opportunity.
It's always a blessing to have y'all's insight. It does help, and we appreciate that.
This has been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Motion passes.
This brings us to item 3E1, trails. Our status map, the two projects, currently in construction. The new portion of the Hefner Trail continues to move along and make good progress. So excited to see that one moving forward. A lot of good progress there. I think the other project that was read in construction was the North River Trail. It was kind of on hold because of the I-44 bridge rehab. That rehab has completed, and so we are working diligently with that contractor to try to get them out there and finish that project. If there's no questions there, then we'll move on to item 3E2 and kind of get back into the same routine of looking through and auditing all those projects and getting a closeout and leaving us with a little more than $2.9 million. And so we just look for approval on the budget closeout on those projects.
Been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Motion passes. Thank you.
And that brings us to item 3E3. This is a budget revision as inflation happens, and we continue kind of work with finalizing the construction costs of the Deep Fork Trail. We realize we're still probably a little underfunded on that project, and because of the closeout and the acceptance of that money, that'd be a budget revision that we would like to recommend an increase of about $2.9 million for, the inflation costs and construction budgets that continue to climb, because of inflation, and therefore we'd like to add additional funds to the Deep Fork Trail.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 3E4, and in the same routine, that leaves us with a small amount of contingency, and we took that contingency of $60,000, but we also did add 3 more projects that we think are good, valid projects, and as things, other trails are completed and finished and closed out, along with the Deep Fork bids. Hopefully they come in a lot better than we think, and that'll leave us additional funds to move down the list of projects, and so therefore we ask for approval of the trail project list.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. That passes. Brock, I have a quick question. I'm sorry, backing up. Could you tell us an update on the signage that's being put up around the trails?
The signing is going very well. My understanding is that they're actually doing some kind of final walkthroughs on several of the projects. I thought I had that list, but I don't have that list, but it's moving right along. I think they started with some of the smaller signage, pushing those through, but some of the bigger signage is actually coming into place. And my understanding, they only have a few left, but they're actually closing out some of the trails that have been completed. But, I've seen some pictures and everything looks really good.
Hearing a lot of good comments.
No, it's
We haven't had that kind of signage on our trails ever, so it's definitely, I think, a great idea and quality of life statement, and
Yeah.
for sure safety.
Absolutely. My commute home, I see a couple of them that have been put up here recently, and they look really nice. It's nice to see them.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3F1 is the July 22 implementation plan update. The update includes 13 new budget sheets and 4 budget revisions. All are offset by the budget closeout of 86 projects. This results in an additional allocation of $1,414,800.27 from the Better Streets, Safer City Sales Tax Fund. I will try to answer any questions you have.
Been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is number 4, financial reports.
Morning, board members. Ian Hutchison from the Office of Management and Budget, here to present the financial report. So this is as of May 31st. And in the top section, our revenues, those increased by just about $72,000 for the month, with most of that coming from interest. And then in the bottom section, expenditures, total expenditures increased by just under $1 million, $980,000 or so, with most of that coming out of the street resurfacing category, which is the largest, and a decent amount coming out of the sidewalks category as well. So those are the significant changes there. And so there's about $3 million or so remaining to be allocated, and about $95 million or so remaining to be spent out of this fund. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the financial report.
Yes, sir. And you said there's still to be spent 95 million, is that correct?
Yeah, so that's basically just the difference here between total to-date revenues, $264 million, and total expenditures to date, $169 million. But most of that is allocated to projects and categories already. So there's the plan in place to spend it in those ways.
But because there's interest on the funding, that's why that month we made about 7,500 in interest?
Yep, right. There's still revenue being collected, and most of that is coming from interest because, of course, the sales tax has ended. There's still some reallocations that happen depending on the detail for the tax remittances for that month. But so that can vary as well, but most of it is usually interest coming in.
Thank you, Ian.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Next would be Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. We're obviously with the approvals today, and we appreciate your time for the special meeting. We also appreciate your understanding of kind of the length that we went through to get the final approvals done. But as we look forward into 2022, we think that we're coming down to maybe our last 2, maybe 3 at most meetings of the board. We have 4 projects that you're going to see here on the screen. They're the ones that yet have not had engineering or preliminary reports presented to you. It's the Northeast 23rd Street, which we approved the budget allocation, additional allocations for today in the upcoming meetings and the stakeholder input that we're going to receive and present that to you. And then we have these 3 bike infrastructure projects at Lottie, Spring Lake, and Indiana Linwood. So as Mike Clark presented to you, we're working on those reports right now, and we're going to bring those to you at your next meeting. What we're forecasting then is potentially a final meeting. It might be in early 2023, but one that will actually do a cap on the entire program. It would maybe be an annual report or a total program report. We would take care of any final business at that point, but we're actually getting very close to the end on this program. Now, projects are going to continue to be constructed. A lot of that construction will go well into 2023, but at least from a point of recommendations from this board, we are not anticipating a lot of additional recommendations following these 4 projects. So we very much appreciate all the assistance, and of course we want to be open to any questions that you have. Staff is still available. We're going to continue to provide construction updates online with our progress, and you will also continue to see just some actions of the City Council as we go through the construction process as well. So with that, I know Jeff Butler is also here with me today, and as we update, we've got a lot of other city items that are going on. I know that you've heard about the bike walk update that's underway, and so we're looking at updating, the planning department is looking at updating the trails, bike, and sidewalk infrastructure plan. So you may be seeing some of those things coming forward. If you choose to want to participate in some of those opportunities, there'll be some announcements online and through other media. But with that, I'm going to wrap up my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chairman, I did have, on those list of contingencies we created today, if this group or these monies don't pick those projects up, is there avenues for those projects to be picked up in the next, or in the current maps?
You know, whether it might be the current maps or it might be one of our bond projects, the intent would be is to match it up with some funds that would help us get to that next project, or at least to allocate those monies to a project that could be completed in that category. So that is the intent. So where you saw some of those short, where there may only be 60,000, but the next project is several $100,000, yeah, we're looking to pair that with some monies from another program. Until we complete that, that's the goal, to fully expend the sales tax program dollars that have been under the purview of this board.
Really good question. I guess that's to be discovered, that what we have on the board, if there's enough funds to complete everything, what I'm hearing is there will be a few that will not be totally funded by our dollars that are left.
And that's possible. So yeah, if we do not fully utilize that contingency fund, but we finish all the projects that were previously approved by the board, that extended project list that you helped approve today, that were the projects identified in the gray shading, we're going to try to work down that list, and we would look for additional funding until we fully use the monies.
So in short, there will not be, all the funding that we will collect, that we already have, that we've allocated plus interest, all that money will basically be spent to try and finish those that were in the gray areas.
Yes. I will share with you, so one of the things that Ian mentioned to you is that as we work with the IRS and we work with the tax collection and we work with corrections that can occur in months to come, we have reserved a small contingency of revenue just to address those changes so that the city general fund does not have to be the funding source should we need to pay some tax or interest monies back in a way that is required from a tax purpose. So it wouldn't directly be a project purpose, but it would be through a tax purpose that we might have to make that adjustment. We have held a contingency just for that to ensure that the program finishes. And that can go on for years. But we've reserved that for that purpose. But yes, the majority of the monies, yes, are going to be fully expended on all projects that have been reviewed by the board.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the board?
Just a couple. So while talking about contingencies, it occurred to me going back to bike facilities, I did want to reemphasize a project that's particularly close to my heart because I see it every single day. With regard to the Southeast 59th from Eastern to Air Depot, I know the design is two-directional, bidirectional protected bike lane on the north side of the road. And if we have some extra money, about 200 yards of sidewalk from the gas station to the site of manufactured homes would go a massive way in helping protect those in wheelchairs or with crutches that I see continuing to use the road rather than the desire line. And especially as the road diet would come into play and the fact that we're going to have to redesign the stoplights anyway, I would like to think that adding a little bit of sidewalk might be within our contingency budget. So I just want to reemphasize that project. I do want to give an extremely strong thanks to staff for two things. Number one, with regard to trail cleanup, there is a massive volunteer effort in the recreational cycling community to identify points where there are drainage issues, where sand piles up, and has organized essentially a volunteer group effort to weekly go out and clean up, sweep up sand and debris of that nature, as well as contacting the city and the Action Center with regard to some problem spots to address drainage and leakage. I think there was a particularly slick part of the Katy Trail that had leakage for quite a while that led to algae buildup in a really slippery condition. And I saw online this weekend that city staff was out there patching the holes and cleaning it up and so forth and so on. So the volunteer community coordinating with staff for a really rapid response to keep our trails safe and accessible is really endearing. So I really appreciate that. And then the other big aspect, I heard at the Traffic Commission meeting last week that the city now has 130 intersections with lead pedestrian indicators. For the general public, a lead pedestrian indicator is a signalization scheme whereby the walk signal comes on for pedestrians a couple of seconds before the light turns green for traffic. So that allows pedestrians to get across faster without the risk of turning traffic. And it heavily emphasizes our ability to be a walkable city. So we went from, I think, one pilot at Walker and 23rd, another pilot at Robinson and 10th, and now we have 130 throughout the city, and that is absolutely huge. So a big thanks for pushing that forward. I think that's all I have.
Good. Any other comments? I have one. I've just celebrated my birthday, and I worked on this idea of the meaning of life. don't have it complete yet. I'll get back to you on that, but it is in large part gratitude. And I have great gratitude for this board and the work and commitment that we've seen through these years, and also for all the work of city staff. I think it's a really wonderful partnership and shows you how wonderful this city is. Got a lot of pride in living here and don't want to take that stuff for granted. Thank you. Any comments from staff? Oh, Max, any update on the OKC bike walk OKC? Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
Yeah, right now, we are kind of getting, over the summer, we've kind of really started getting back into it. Some of you may remember we had a transportation program planner, Lakeisha Dunbar, when this started, and then she went on to greater things, and so we kind of had to put it on hold for a little bit while we dealt with more urgent things, and now we have a new transportation program planner, Justin Henry, and we also have another transportation planner, Sasha McCrone. So we are kind of staffed back up now and able to really dive back into that. So I don't have a final timeline for you, but we're shooting for fall towards the end of the year at the latest, I think. We're also trying to kind of align that with maps for as we start to get to a point where we're going to be recommending sidewalk and bike lane projects to those subcommittees. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we're at with it. Yeah.
thank you, Max. Any comments from citizens? Very good. Everyone stay safe. We are adjourned. Thank you.